By the time the lights went out at the company's spring gala and the projector sprang to life with the wrong slideshow, people thought it was part of Beckett's Embrace Disruption theme. He loved that word, disruption, used it like cologne. On the screen, where the Q1 wins were supposed to glitter, a baby monitor feed flickered in grainy green, timestamp glowing like a confession. The ballroom air smelled like salmon, rented tuxes, and tax deductions. Champagne paused halfway to mouths. You could hear the ice machine in the hallway think about its choices. I didn't plan it to be cinematic. I planned it to be undeniable. No voiceover, no violin, just 5 minutes of a 5-month-old blinking in a dim room, rooting for a bottle that never arrived. The little fists windmilled with the same determination my HR training keeps saying we should bring to work. The silence that followed wasn't the hush of awe. It was the silence Americans make when reality crashes a brand activation. That's the ending you clicked for, I know. But the story has a habit of starting where pride gets punched. My name is Evan. I used to believe our suburb in Ohio was designed by God and financed by Costco. My mornings were a parade of coffee mugs from conferences I never attended. My afternoons built from spreadsheets sturdy enough to live under. We had a neat ranch house, a genteel war with the HOA, and the kind of "we're doing great, right?" marriage that blooms in Instagram captions and shrivels when the dishwasher breaks for the 3rd time. Our son, Jonah, arrived in winter like a small, loud comet and reset every clock in the house. For 5 months, I believed family meant we take turns sleeping and the rest will sort itself out. Then my cheating wife, Sloan, sorted it out with my boss, Beckett, VP of Sales and Chief Evangelist of Phrases That Don't Mean Anything, at a co-working space with meditation pods and gluten-free infidelity. You think I'm exaggerating? I would too if the brochure for the Sequoia Center for Executive Wellness didn't advertise soft partitions for deep connection. Beckett pitched the center in a staff meeting like it was healthcare. What if we had a space where our people can rediscover their best selves? He said, teeth gleaming like an HR policy. He said the word vulnerable the same way you'd say fleece-lined. Sloan met him once at a company picnic when Jonah was the size of a baguette and I was the size of a shipwreck. She laughed at his jokes like they were a warm towel on a long flight. To be fair, I was busy trying to figure out how to unfold a stroller designed by someone who hates parents. Beckett asked what Sloan did besides motherhood, the kind of question that looks progressive and tastes like condescension. And when she said, "I used to run events," he said, "I run events too." And that was apparently a dessert worth staying for. I want to tell you I saw every red flag and raised a bigger one. But sleep deprivation softens edges, and American optimism paints over rot like it's craft day. I noticed what you'd notice: Sloan's hair done on a weekday, a text that arrived with the brightness of an emergency flare and was flipped face down like a guilty coin, a bottle of expensive face serum smuggled into the Target budget. But we were 5 months into Jonah's life, the month all the books whisper about, with sympathy and a little fear. He had a growth spurt and a vendetta against naps. Our pediatrician spoke fluent reassurance. "You're both doing great," she lied kindly. I took it personally. The day that conjugated our marriage into past tense, I came home from work at 3:42 p.m. because my one-on-one with Beckett had been bumped to next quarter, corporate for never. The house was quiet in the way that makes breath feel loud. Jonah's monitor, the tiny NASA of parenthood, showed him awake, eyes rimmed in red, cheeks salted, mouth searching for a bottle that sat on the kitchen counter with scoop marks like moon craters and no water in it. The powder had clumped into a small, bitter hill. The sink had a ring of dried formula, evidence that someone planned to be a parent and then became something else. I fed him, changed him, and watched him surrender to sleep like a soldier relieved from watch. Then I texted, "Where are you?" "Meeting at Sequoia," Sloan replied. Beckett needed an extra set of hands. Be back soon. Love you. There are times you can fix your life with a conversation, and there are times you file paperwork. I buckled Jonah into the carrier, a Sherpa for the mountain of proof I didn't know I'd need, and drove to the Sequoia Center, which sits in an office park between a fast casual salad religion and a storefront church with a cross that blinks "Jesus Saves" in red like a warning label. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and brand storytelling. A receptionist with the stare of someone trained to distinguish between donors and men in crisis asked if I had an appointment. I brought an auditor, I said, and held up my son. They weren't in the meditation pod. They were in a connection booth, which is like a phone booth if phone booths charged by the hour and came with dimmers. The glass was frosted because even the architects knew the story they were helping to tell. Maybe we make monsters out of people to make sense of their appetites, but there's nothing cinematic about two adults choosing themselves while a baby cries across town. My phone recorded the hallway audio, the kind of conversational intimacy that always sounds like a script. You look alive again. You make me feel seen. We're not hurting anyone. I've heard better dialogue at Little League snack bars. Still, the tape would be important later when adults with lanyards and gavels needed to weigh words. Every affair fancies itself a firework. Up close, it's leftover smoke and smoldering drapes. I didn't kick the door in. I didn't call the news or the cops or my mother. I went home and did what you do when the plot swerves: laundry, dishes, the math of tomorrow. I set a bottle for 2 a.m., another for 5. I made a list called Order of Operations, and I followed it because men raised by people who taught them to use socket wrenches will put their souls on a checklist and hope the torque is right. The list said pediatrician, document weight, sleep, feeding, neighbor Elena, the neighborhood's unofficial security camera, daycare, attendance logs, HR, conflict of interest policy, attorney, custody basics. Also on the list, breathe. Also, do not become a headline you won't like reading later. If this were the gritty version, there'd be a scene where I confess to my best friend at a bar with sawdust on the floor and a neon beer sign flickering like a dying planet. The satire version sends me to a dad's group that meets in a church basement where the coffee is bad on purpose. I pick the church basement. 5 men circled plastic chairs like old astronauts. One taught me how to clip an infant's nails without drawing blood. One had a spreadsheet of bottle temperatures and a TED Talk-level enthusiasm for burping. The oldest, a male carrier with opinions about boots, said, "Revenge feels good until you're the one buying the consequences. Build the case, not the bonfire." I wanted a sword. They handed me a pen. It was the right weapon. You should know, though, that American life runs on secret councils. Our HOA is a modest mafia in cardigans. My company's culture committee is a marketing arm with snacks. The daycare moms group chat could topple a local government if it were bored enough. I told Elena next door, retired, lethal, invested in neighborhood safety like it paid a dividend, what I suspected. She didn't blink. She delivered a flash drive like a spy and said, "Ring cameras are the new truth serum." On it, 3 days of our street at 3 p.m., Sloan leaving, Jonah's room in the front window slow fading to dusk, my truck pulling in at 3:42, me sprinting, door flying open, the kind of footage a prosecutor could storyboard. No prosecutor would come. It wasn't that kind of crime. But family court respects timestamp and routine, and HR respects liability like it's a deity. The lawyer's office had diplomas and a toy box. That juxtaposition made me trust him. Someone who knows people don't stop being parents when they become clients. He asked me to tell the story with dates and without adjectives. I thought adjectives were my only tools, but I learned there's a grammar for survival. "This is neglect," he said, not as drama, but as math. He laid out my path: temporary orders, a schedule, a plan for supervised visitation until Sloane could show the court she had returned to Earth. It sounded cruel and looked like mercy. I cried in the car, quietly, because quiet is the decibel of fatherhood. HR was a glass box at the top of an escalator, a confessional with badge access. The woman across the table had two expressions: empathetic and legal. I explained that my supervisor, yes, directly above me on the org chart, was in a relationship with my spouse, and that I had concerns about favoritism at work and a crisis at home. She didn't ask for gossip, she asked for documents. I slid the flash drive across the desk, along with a copy of the company's policy banning relationships that could compromise fairness or create the appearance of impropriety. I half expected a trap door to open under me. Instead, she said the magic words of corporate America: "We'll take it from here." I wanted her to add, "and never give it back." But even I know miracles have limited word counts. That brings us back to the gala and the accidental film festival. I didn't hack anything. I just sent the AV vendor the file they thought they were supposed to queue at 8 p.m. and named it Q1_final_final_v7.mp4, which is the incantation that opens any digital door. When the screen lit and a room full of investors, spouses, and people who sprinkle their resumes with servant leader saw my son reach for a bottle that wasn't there, you could feel the narrative change. Beckett froze. Sloane turned to salt. The board chair's face did a full year of emotions in 1 minute. To their credit, the crowd didn't boo or applaud. An old man from accounting actually removed his glasses and polished them, because sometimes we cling to ritual when truth lands like a meteor. Someone near the shrimp tower whispered, "Infidelity." Someone else hissed, "Cheating wife." And the word betrayal hung in the room like fog machine residue. The next days moved like a courtroom drama directed by a PTA. There was a hearing with a judge whose robe looked ironed by someone who loves her. We didn't argue morality. We argued minutes. The judge asked Sloane where she was between 3 and 4 p.m. on the dates the videos covered. She said, "At work, helping plan events," a sentence that did contortions on its way out. My attorney presented the daycare's attendance logs, the pediatrician's notes, the monitor footage, and the text Sloane sent me at 3:21 that read, "Be back soon," the kind of script that doesn't survive the projector. The judge's face didn't change. When people talk about justice, they want fireworks. The real thing is quieter and more expensive. Temporary orders arrived like steel scaffolding. I had primary custody. Sloane had supervised time. A path was drawn if she wanted to walk it. At work, the board issued a press release dressed as a value statement. Beckett resigned to prioritize his health and family, which is corporate, for we found out what you did and would like you to evaporate with dignity. My inbox became a confessional for coworkers who always had a weird feeling, which is American for "I saw the smoke" and ignored it because meetings. HR scheduled a mandatory seminar about boundaries and power, starring 2 cheerful consultants and a PowerPoint slide, showing a stock photo of people high-fiving near a copier. Someone in the back asked if the copier was where they were supposed to fall in love. The consultants ignored it, as is their training. You might be impatient for the revenge speech, but revenge, when you keep it, shrinks to fit the drawer you allow it. Mine became the toolbox of a life that looked ordinary from the street. Jonah and I built routines with the devotion of a nation-state. Mornings started with the glow of an electric kettle and a bottle warmed to Switzerland levels of neutrality. Evenings ended with a bath that turned the tub into a maritime conference for plastic ducks. I learned to fold onesies with military precision and to nod gravely at discussions of sleep regressions like a man who has faced the sea. At 3 a.m., between feeds, I sometimes drafted sarcasm in my notes app, little parodies of Beckett's speeches. We can't pour from an empty cup, so please leave your cups with me and I'll drink them on your behalf. That kind of thing. I never posted them. I didn't need to. The best satire is a warm baby snoring on your chest. Sloane did not vanish into villainy. She is not a monster. She is a person who took a wrong exit and found a motel built of therapy words and dimmer switches. Supervised visits began at a bright room run by women who could run a nation if given a budget. She brought snacks and sadness. She learned that love is not a speech. It is a schedule that survives the weather. She asked me if I could ever forgive her. I told her forgiveness is not a door, it is a ramp, and I don't build ramps for people who refuse to climb. She said she would climb. I said good. We didn't hug, we scheduled. In America, you can rebuild almost anything if you can master Google Calendar. There were days I felt like a conspiracy theorist in my own life, connecting red string between institutions that are supposed to protect us and mostly protect their own vibes. The HOA sent me a warning about my trash cans being visible from the street. I wanted to send them the exhibit list from court and ask if they had thoughts on those cans. Instead, I rolled the bins behind the fence and saved my energy for Jonah's next nap battle. The daycare sent home a note that said, "Jonah really loves pears," with a smiley face sticker. And I framed it in my mind like a diploma, because when your house has survived betrayal and toxic love disguised as self-care, a child's fondness for pears feels like a marching band. On my lunch breaks, I wrote a little newsletter for a small circle of friends called Dad Ops, Dispatches from the Front Lines. Reviews of baby monitors like they were surveillance satellites, recipes for one-handed pasta, think pieces about why packaging that says "Easy Open" is a personal attack. I wrote about the night I almost texted Beckett a paragraph, and instead deleted it and fed my son. I wrote about how infidelity is a lightning strike and accountability is a roof, boring and heroic. People wrote back to say they laughed in the half-dark and that the laughter felt like repair. The algorithm would prefer I scorch the earth. My family prefers pancakes on Sunday and a laundry system that is 60% effective and 100% sincere. Months later, when Jonah pulled himself up on the coffee table like a tiny man declaring independence, Sloane texted me a photo from her therapist's office, a journal page with a sentence that read, "The person I hurt most was the one who couldn't speak yet." I sat down on the floor and let that sentence move through me like weather. There are worlds in which she doubles down, writes a memoir about her courage, moves to a city where people drink better coffee and talk about boundaries. In our world, she shows up to the bright room, learns the choreography of bedtime, and leaves when the schedule says. That is not a redemption arc Netflix would buy. It is the kind you can live inside. Sometimes, at the grocery store, a woman from accounting will recognize me in the cereal aisle and tilt her head in that way people do when they want to say they're sorry for enjoying the drama. She asks how we're doing, and I say, "Tired and lucky," and she laughs and says, "Same," and we stare at the wall of Cheerios like it contains a prophecy. At work, new hires read a policy stricter than our old one and attend a training that mentions a case study everyone knows was us. In the neighborhood, Elena waves like a lighthouse and occasionally texts to ask if my bins are sufficiently invisible. America keeps spinning, weird and beautiful and capable of kindness, and my job in it is small and specific. Keep a human fed, tell the truth when asked, and under no circumstances attend another gala. If you came here for a dramatic thesis about cheating and its place in the civilization of the suburbs, here is the only one I trust. Betrayal thrives in vague language and dies in the daylight of details. We stood in daylight, Jonah and I. We learned that revenge can be a quiet ledger, that toxic love evaporates when the work of care is done with competence and a little humor, that family is not a brand word, but a Tuesday night with half a sink of dishes and a baby who smells like soap and pears. We learned that the phrase cheating wife fits in headlines, but not in calendars, which insist on names, drop-offs, pickups, nap windows, and the long, unsexy road back to something like peace. On a boring afternoon, the kind no story bothers to include, I held Jonah in the shade while a high school marching band practiced 3 blocks away, the drums stumbling toward rhythm. He fell asleep on my chest, warm as bread. A breeze barely moved the leaves. The world had the decency to stay ordinary. I thought about the gala, the monitor feed glowing over a room built on denial, and I wanted to apologize to my old self for believing grand gestures change anything. They don't. What changes a life is the baby waking to eat, and someone being there with a bottle that is already mixed, at the right temperature, at the right time. That's not the stuff of viral clips. That's the opposite of infidelity. That's love that doesn't need an audience. And when I look back on this season, that is the only revenge worth keeping.